Pete? Mr. Gutwald, who is this guy?
Okay, I'm ready to begin. Yes. Good afternoon. I'd like to call the Rules and City Government Committee to order. Please note for the record, both members, Alderman Arnett and Alderman Savage, are both in attendance. First item on our agenda is approval of the minutes.
Move approval of the minutes.
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, next item, appointments and reappointments to committees. First person on the agenda is Elizabeth Ramirez to the Art and Public Places Committee. Is Elizabeth with us today?
She may be running a little bit late.
Okay, then we'll go on to Darren Gilliam. Come on up, Miss Gilliam. Is it Darren?
Yes, Darren.
Okay. You want to sit at the table? Welcome. And you are seeking appointment to the Art and Public Places Committee.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested?
Well, I'm a native Annapolitan. I grew up here throughout, I got my first.
That's her mic. Ms. Gilliam, could you make sure your mic is on? The green light should be very bright.
It's kind of bright.
See where the button says push? Press that.
Oh, there we go. Okay, hello?
Okay.
Okay. I'm a native Annapolitan. I got my first round of arts education through the local school system, through Maryland Hall, local art camps. Left, came back home because I love it here, and I think I want to be on I know I want to be on a committee for two reasons. One is because I'm the director of Annapolis Arts Week, which just ended its second year. And a part of a huge push and initiative for Annapolis Arts Week is to be have a vital part within public art and kind of making sure that it bridges new school and old school and seeing community art come together. And then I would say that my second reason for wanting to join is just being a native Annapolitan and kind of understanding the traditions and the cultures of Annapolis, and also being somebody who went outside of Annapolis to gain a little bit more, and somebody who's in love with street art and public art and wants to see how we can bridge it together in the city that I grew up in and I'm raising my kids in. So that's why I want to be a part of the committee.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Gilliam?
Sounds very good to me. I had to start when I looked at your signature. It reminded me so much of Palmer pen method. It's very neat.
Thank you.
I think indicative of the artist in you.
Alderman Savage, questions?
I move we approve, or we recommend approval of this appointment.
All right, I second that.
Second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Ms. Gilliam, for being here. Your nomination will go before the full council at next Monday's meeting, Ms. Green? At next Monday's meeting.
Okay.
We have not been giving the candidates an opportunity to speak at the full council. You're free to attend, but it's probably not necessary.
Okay.
So.
All right.
Thank you.
Actually, let me check that, Madam Chair. I think the committee, the council or commission has had a problem in having a full slate, and they haven't been able to take certain actions. Do you know, Takia, whether they need?
Oh, you're talking about at the Monday,
Right.
Monday's meeting? Mr. Elson, are you familiar with the need for them to be sworn in at Monday's meeting?
Yes. They're really lacking a quorum right now. So we started on this about a month ago, trying to get the mayor's office to get these vacancies cleared up, and he did, and very, very timely got them appointed. So the next meeting is probably October 23rd.
Arts and
Arts and Public Places.
Yeah, October 23rd, so I think there's
probably would need to be.
what was that?
So you would prefer to have a quorum, to have all of your appointees sworn in prior to their next meeting?
That would be preferable because they have struggled to get a quorum in recent months.
Right, and there's
So-
been some problems with some finance things that,
Right.
Mhm.
There's business that needs to be conducted there, and it's not urgent business, but it's business that needs to get attended to. So under the best set of circumstances, if they can get sworn in prior to their next meeting, that would be very helpful.
So what I just said to Ms. Gilliam, I will take back. You should all probably plan to attend the next council meeting on the 8th. Is that the date? On the 8th, and we will put it on or have it placed on the agenda to have the
Yeah.
swearing in at that time.
I think that's great, and I just want to make sure that that commission, which a very important commission, that it's fully staffed, and we have a
Okay.
staffing problem there too right now as far as someone recording minutes, and so we're working on that too.
Okay.
Okay.
So thank you. And so, Mr. Elson and Ms. Green, could you both make sure that for the next agenda, for the meeting agenda on the 8th, that it is the swearing in of these candidates?
Thank you.
Okay. Hmm?
All at once.
Well, yes, thank you. The next candidate is the appointment of Raquel Blake to Arts and Public Places. Come on down. Hi. Bless you. Welcome. And so tell us why you're interested in arts and public places.
Well, I'm interested in the Arts and Public Places Commissions because just like Mrs. Gilliam, I'm a Annapolis native. And at the moment, I actually have my own startup fashion brand. So within a short amount of time, I've actually been invited to showcase overseas and as well as places like New York. And I've actually had some celebrities wear some of my things. So I feel like I can bring a lot of new, fresh ideas. Pretty excited about that. And that's about it.
So you're an artist yourself also?
Yes,
then?
I am.
And a startup business today?
Yes, yes, yes. I've had it since just about February
Mm-hmm.
of this year.
Well, wonderful. Questions for Ms. Blake?
Nope.
Then I'll entertain a motion.
I move we recommend this appointment to the council.
I second.
Okay, further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much for coming before us, and Monday night,
Okay. What time?
7 o'clock.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it's pretty early on the agenda usually, so you probably should be out, we'll be out by 8.
That's good. That's good.
But when you say that, then it never happens,
Right.
you know, so.
It's all right.
All right,
All right.
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anne Marie's declaration of war that night, I think.
Uh,
How come we're having a meeting on a holiday?
Oh, it's Veterans Day, isn't it?
Columbus Day.
No, next. Oh, I know, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
And the
it's,
boat show is gonna be breaking down. I mean, I know where my priorities are.
the next appointment is Ms. Genevieve Teresa Torrey to the Arts and Public Places Commission. Hi. So is this an appointment or a reappointment?
This is an appointment.
This is an appointment.
Mhm.
So tell us about your interest in arts and public places.
I have been in the arts community ever since high school, and currently, can you hear?
Is the bright light on?
Yep, it is.
Okay.
And currently, my husband and I have been working in various large cities for redevelopment programs. Basically, we do restructuring of neighborhoods, and we're in Atlanta and Boston and New York, in DC area for Ivy City area, if you're familiar with that area, dealing with renovations and bringing more arts and making the neighborhoods more beautifying them. So it's very a large part of my life already, and Annapolis is my home. I'm raising my children here. I've had two, well, one's graduating this year from Broadneck. I have another one that is already at Bryn Mawr in Philly. And then I have two younger ones that attend at Annapolis Elementary. So we're here and we love the city, and I love to see all the art. We walk around and look at all the murals and all the art pieces that are currently here. Music is another part of my background. I did leave Annapolis for a brief stint. I lived in Nashville for 12 years, working in the music industry with songwriters. Before I left, though, I had a little songwriter showcase that I had in my backyard in Eastport, and the local community was welcome to come, and I had traveling songwriters come to town and perform for us, and it was a free show, people just gathering in my backyard. So I love the community bringing everybody together for the arts.
Okay, well, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Torrey?
No, Madam Chair, it's a very impressive resume, and I'm sure she'll be a great addition to the Arts and Public Places.
Thank you.
And
I hope
move,
so.
we recommend to the council approving this appointment.
I'll second.
Okay. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Say aye.
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 Thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
as I've said before, Monday night will be the swearing in.
And you said 7 o'clock?
7 o'clock.
Thank you.
Yes. I must remind everyone that we'll be at war on Monday, I believe. Is Maritime's not coming on Monday?
No.
Oh,
Are they?
okay, never
Are
mind.
they? Is it on the agenda? Because the tug is until November 3rd. I haven't looked at the agenda, but, okay.
Okay, so we may be, there may be someone declaring
Yeah,
war on us
right.
on Monday night, but that's yet to be determined. So, the next item is the appointment of Krista Rich to the Arts and Public Places. Hi. Welcome.
Hello.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in arts and public places.
Well, I've been always interested in arts. I come from a family, a very musical family, and my mother was also an artist, so I grew up with it. From the time I was younger on up, we did all sorts of different types of things in our family that were art related, including big, huge birthday parties. I ended up in my career going into special events, but I did it at the National Gallery of Art. So I did that, and now I'm at the National Archives Museum. So I've been connected to the museums and federal museums for about 25 years. In addition to that, arts has just been a huge part of my life. It's also very important to the healing of self and also community. And those are the main reasons why I think I want to be on it and how I think I can contribute.
Well, thank you. Questions for Ms.?
Once again,
Rich?
another impressive resume, and
Oh, thank you.
certainly I would move that we recommend approval of this appointment to the city council.
I'll second that motion.
Okay.
Okay,
Further
thank you.
discussion? Hearing none?
Anyone else?
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you, and hopefully we'll see you on Monday night, 7 o'clock. All right, the next is the reappointment of Cynthia Tolles-Cruzen to, of course, the Arts and Public Places. Hello. So tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to be reappointed to the
Okay,
commission.
I represent Ward 7. Rob Savage is my alderman. I've been a member of the commission since the Josh Cohen administration. And I say since that time, we've had a lot of evolution. Our programs are, really expanding by leaps and bounds. I'm actually a healthcare provider. I also have my master's of public health. I've worked extensively overseas doing grassroots kind of development. I like to index community health, public health with public art because they're very related. So some of our programs that have been very successful have been the City Dock Summer Concert Series. If you experience, the community spirit down there, you see, buses pulling up from Atrium Manresa, from Bay Woods or Heritage Harbor, elderly folks coming out to hear a swing band or a big band orchestra, and they're getting up and dancing. That's what public art and public health is about. We need to have more of these events, perhaps at the Pitt Moyer Rec Center. Perhaps we need to have more community events that young people or people on all spectrums of the age groups, so that they have things to do, so that we can address the violence in their communities. Some of them are really afraid to come out of their homes in Bywater or Robinwood. They're really prisoners in their homes because of their communities. They need to have organized events at the community center, the Pitt Moyer Rec Center, things that they want to do. That will help both with the gun violence and with the opioid crisis. So these are the kinds of things that we need to continue with. We need to expand our programs. And right now, we have very limited funding, but we've been able to piecemeal these projects together. Right now, we have a lot of health disparities within our community. We, as a commission, have had multicultural events such as the City Dock Tango, City Dock Salsa, and this is really pulling in a lot of the Hispanic community. That's our goal. We want to make it multicultural, diverse, pulling in for all of the communities in all of the wards, not just in the tourist area. So, as you see, I have a lot of goals to accomplish on this commission, but I think, we have been very successful with a very limited budget, but with a group of very talented individuals, people who have taken their time and come from work on a afternoon and taking their vacation time to come down to City Hall to attend this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a leadership role on the commission right now?
A what role?
Do you have a leadership role?
I'm Ward 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought I understood someone to say you were the acting chairperson.
I'm not acting, I'm keeping the ball rolling.
Okay.
So that our programs would be throughout
You
the
have
summer.
a cheering section in the back. You have to know that. I mean.
As Rob knows, I am Ward 7.
Yes.
And we want to get some really pocket parks out in Ward 7. Mount Moriah and John Wesley did a beautiful job doing rain gardens and really doing a great job on their property. But I think that we need to develop pocket parks right there and award them benches so that they can, have a little park right there. So, we don't have any money. That's the problem.
And you're not making that plug because there's two members of the Finance Committee sitting here. I'm sure that has
I
nothing to do.
was not aware of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Alderman, question? Alderman Savage?
Yes, Cynthia.
Ms. Cruzen? Ms. Cruzen?
You're not done yet.
I'm not done yet.
Your alderman has a question for you.
Well, not so much a question. Just wanted to thank you. You've shown just an incredible amount of passion and dedication to the public arts, and not just for the whole city, but the ward. And you've just been so incredibly helpful and informative to me whenever you've been providing me with updates and information. And that's just, again, very, very much appreciated and very helpful. So thank you.
Well, Rob, I have to say, that really does warm my heart. And I have to say that our commission has come under quite a bit of, I would say, a black cloud. And Ellen Moyer, under her leadership, a lot of her dreams have been, fulfilled. She created the commission. And it's been a really thankless and frustrating job for her. And I think that, we do need to thank the people who have volunteered their time. She was giving up to 35 to 40 hours a week on this commission. So, I mean, we really do need to remember the legacy that she has left us. And her leadership has been strong. A lot of the programs that started very small, now, I mean, we have musicians and groups and orchestras calling us. They want to perform at City Dock. We have artists who are calling Arlene Berlin. They want to display in the city's art galleries. So everything has really grown by leaps and bounds. It's almost more than a volunteer commission really can handle, to be honest. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Question? I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to move that we recommend favorably.
Second?
Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. The reappointment of David Arthur to the Arts in Public Places. And you too have a cheering section in the back, I see.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So tell us why you're interested in being reappointed to the Arts in Public Places.
Like a lot of my fellow committee members, I'm an Annapolitan. I grew up here. I live here. I was a graphic design major in college. I'm a photographer and a musician, so I'm really interested in being an advocate for fellow musicians and artists in the Annapolis area. I've been with the commission for about 7 years, give or take. So as Cynthia kind of pointed out very vividly, we've come a long way in that time. We've got a lot of different initiatives going on, and we're just kind of getting the full swing of things. So I definitely wanted to stay here to see it through, because there's a lot of good things in store for the people of Annapolis, and I think they deserve to, get our talents to put it to work, and so people can express themselves and be able to, have a platform to express themselves.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Questions for Mr. Arthur?
I move that we recommend this reappointment to the City Council.
I'll second that motion.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Well, thank you. And Monday night, 7 o'clock.
Thank you.
All right. The reappointment of Barbara Salazar Torian. I'm trying to say that with all the flair that I can.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And tell us why you're interested in being reappointed to this commission.
Thank you, Chair. I currently serve on AIPPC and represent Ward 4. I'd like to expand, little shout out. I'd like to expand the interest in the arts, not only for the visual arts, but the literary arts. Thank you. The literary arts and other visual arts in Annapolis. This past spring, I was co-chair of the committee that elected Temple Cohen as our first poet laureate of the city of Annapolis. And we'd really like to see more of those types of programmings involved in the city along with youth. This October, we're hoping to have a reading of Garcia Lorca's poetry with a Spanish poet in English, but invite the kids to come along also and learn about different types of poetry, and also to write poetry themselves, to express themselves. So I'd like to continue expanding the arts, not just in the Arts District, but in all 8 districts here in Annapolis.
Well, I have to say, and being the English teacher and Miss Salazar's English teacher, didn't know we even had a poet laureate until the ceremony that was held down on City Dock. So it's a welcome addition to our arts programming. So thank you for your contribution and commitment to that.
You're welcome.
Questions for Ms.
No, just
Victoria?
a comment from the last couple of people. It is true that Ellen Moyer, this was a passion for her, and she did devote and has devoted a great deal of effort to this. And it's good to see you want to come back, because I know there's been some discord, some troubled times. We did approve dedicating the gallery downstairs in Ellen's name, and I've enjoyed watching the art flow through there. So it's always good to see people come back and go one more time. And with that in mind, I would recommend this. We recommend to the council reappointment.
I will second that motion.
Okay, further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you very much, and Monday night, 7 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next reappointment of Robert Henry Waldman to the Planning Commission.
No arts in public places?
I don't think he wants arts in public places. Maybe I'm wrong.
I feel like I should want to switch to the art in public places. Sounds like more fun.
Tell us why you want to do that some more.
I've been doing it for 22 years. And it started when I came one night. There was a Baltimore developer who wanted to take the fields behind Old Bates and had some sort of proposal to the city council, and I knew what his father had done in Baltimore. He'd sort of switched the deal around a hotel and public finance. So I spoke that night very late in the night, and what happened 15 years later is what we have now, which is a fantastic operation going on at Bates Heritage. It's that sort of thing and good planning which turns me on over the years. I have done my best to be balanced, to be pragmatic, to be efficient, and to be a voice for the people, and to listen carefully to what applicants, developers have to bring to the table, much of which is important to the city. And I hope to continue it. We have important things coming up, which I'd like to see settled. And since in the audience is both the head of the Department of Planning and Zoning and Mr. Hyatt, who's often an applicant at this table, I have a feeling I say, speak now or forever hold your peace.
You're giving them an opportunity to object?
Take a shot at you.
Because, you know, I'm
Oh,
in the
Mr.
middle.
Hyatt's getting up.
So I would appreciate a reappointment, thank you.
Do you have the greatest historical knowledge on the commission now?
Do I have the what?
The greatest historical
Institutional knowledge.
institutional knowledge?
Yes, yes. And I feel like in the past maybe 5 years, I finally began to understand what it's about, to get a sense of perspective, get a better sense of the forces that we're dealing with and how to shape them for the future, you know, for the future health of the city. It's economic well-being, it's social well-being, it's environmental well-being, and in many cases, it's traffic well-being. But yes, I have served much longer than anybody else there. I'm also the only attorney on the council, which may or may not be good, but I think it helps.
You're an attorney on the, you're the only
Commission.
attorney on the council?
On the commission, yeah,
Okay, on the commission.
yeah.
Okay.
But I'm not a real estate attorney, but
Alderman Savage?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Waldman, for your willingness to continue and for your long years of service. Yeah, I do find that your recommendations from the commission at large are very helpful. You know, we have one item on the legislation on the agenda today that I found your recommendations and very helpful in that regard because it's a lot for us to go through. And I know it seems like these days the commission's meeting more frequently than the city council. So things, again, hopefully that'll calm down for.
Now, as the chairman now, I'm really trying to make the commission, I'm trying to give to the council good recommendations, good stuff. So, because we listen to it, and we often have much more time to vet things and hear things and talk about things. And then, so our recommendations hopefully are well chosen, but that they're not just off the cuff. And one final thing, which is a clerical matter. I'm not going to be in town this next Monday.
Then you can't be reappointed then.
Well,
I mean,
I'll just-
really.
Actually, that's not a problem.
I think the
Because
planning commission will have a quorum.
Well, but they also, the appointment continues until there's a
Oh, till you,
replacement.
Yes.
so you
yes.
continue until you're reappointed, is that what
Yes,
it is?
it's been since 2016 that it expired.
Thank you.
Yeah, right.
I think Mr. Hyatt would really like to say something. He's sitting in. Could you come to the mic, please? You see, you opened this door. I'm just
Yeah, I
saying,
know.
you know.
He gave me the opportunity, so for the record, Alan Hyatt, 200 Westgate Circle. I will say that Mr. Waldman and I do share often institutional knowledge. We may come from different perspectives, but we certainly share institutional knowledge together, and I will say that over the years, the projects that we have brought before the Planning Commission have often evolved, and many times they've turned out much better than they started, in part because of some of the suggestions and recommendations of Mr. Waldman. So I think he has the city's interest at heart. He's pretty fair, pretty balanced, and that's the sort of thing we need when we bring projects to the Planning Commission. So I endorse him heartily.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Alderman?
I'm waiting for the FBI report, but.
They only have until Thursday, so you might be able to get it in.
Before Pete gets a whack, I move that we recommend to the city council this reappointment.
I'll second
All
that
right.
motion.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
So, Mr. Waldman, I guess you should attend the second meeting of October, which is probably the
Actually, it won't be until the 3rd.
Yeah.
Until the 3rd.
the 3rd of November.
Yeah, because I don't get back into town
Okay.
till midnight on the next
But
Monday.
do they have to sign it at the council? I
Actually,
don't
they
think
do
so.
not. It's
I think
Arts
they
and Public
can,
Places
you can just
does,
come
but-
in and
Yeah,
Regina will
Yeah.
take care of you.
so.
Yeah.
So Regina will send you your
Yeah.
directive. Yes.
Regina will give you directions just like she gives everybody else
Exactly.
there.
Coordinate with Mr. Rowell. He'll set it up.
Yes. All right. Yeah, I have her. And going back to the top of our list, the appointment of Elizabeth Ramirez to the Arts and Public Places. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Great, thanks.
Good. Tell us why you're interested in arts and public places.
So I own Whimsy Cove Framing and Art. We've been in business for 11 years, and we were in Edgewater for 10, and now I just moved to the Design District on Chickapin. And I'm also the president of the Annapolis Arts Alliance for the last 4 years, which, of course, as you know, Mayor Moyer began. I'm on the board of Four Rivers Heritage Area. I'm on the board of the Creative and Performing Arts Center of South County. I was on the board of Muddy Creek. I'm on the board of Design District. So my whole life is art, basically. And I'm a picture framer. I have the starving artist degree. And we do printing as well. Just between being a business owner and then through with all my nonprofits that I'm on, I just felt that this is like the next step for me. Because I've been doing, with the other different boards I've been on, helping them along and stuff. So I'm just excited to be a voice, it seems like a larger voice here in Annapolis. So I live in Edgewater, but my business is in Annapolis, actually Ward 3. I'm just like, can't wait to get going.
Well, that's exciting to hear. You see this, because I was thinking, you're involved in so many boards and commissions already, but you're thinking this is a step above what you've been doing.
Yeah, sort of step up, because as the president of the Annapolis Arts Alliance, like I've been with them for 8 years, but I've been president for 4. I'm actually in my 2nd term with them, and I plan to step down. After my 2nd term ends in 2 years, so it's every 3 years, because someone else needs to step up and do things, and and have a chance at it to redo. And I feel like this is like the next step up, getting more into the community, getting a voice out there for other artists. We just had a mural done on the side of my building. By Mary Bowen, and of course all the murals that are done in the design district, to have a stronger voice about those, and what they're doing and stuff. So,
are you the representative, or would you be the representative from the arts district?
Yeah, it's the design district.
Or the design district.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I'm happy to be. I'm their new marketing chair. Of course, I like to spread the word. Get the word out about how awesome art is. Okay. Yes, absolutely. So,
thank you. Questions?
Nope.
Ms. Ramirez, then I'll entertain a motion.
I move we recommend favorably to the council for this appointment.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, further discussion, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, and Monday night?
I'll be there.
7 o'clock.
Yes, thanks.
And I think that exhausts our list of appointments. Is there anyone else who, I think we've gone through the list. Okay. So going on to legislation before the committee. Our first piece of legislation is 0818, adequate public facilities. Adequate school facility standards for the purpose of amending the test for additional school capacity by requiring schools with enrollment greater than 95% of the state-rated capacity to be listed as closed on the annual school utilization chart and matters generally relating to adequate school facilities. We have 2 of the sponsors. Alderman Arnett, you want to begin?
Yes, so Madam Chair, at the last meeting when we took this up, we had Alex Stagnovich from the county here from the school board, and he was extremely helpful. The thrust of the dialogue at that meeting was to make the city thresholds consistent with the county thresholds, which I believe are 100% in all 3 cases, elementary, middle, and high school. And we were going to be getting language from Office of Law to merely adopt the county code. Since then, I've been advised that we probably want to use specific numbers. So the presumption was if the county changed their thresholds, we would automatically change with theirs, but I've been advised that that's not a good idea, that we should put in the specific numbers and move forward. But Mr. Elson is here, and he was the city attorney who was advising this, us on this matter. So I would certainly entertain some discussion from Mr. Elson about whether it's more appropriate to just amend, we're on page 2,
right,
the numerical amounts, which are 95, let's see, I'm looking at it here, 95% for the high school, which was the change, and this committee was recommending that since the county is using 100, we should just substitute 100 there on line 25 of page 2.
Well, at this point, either way is going to be okay. It's just the preference of the committee. So if you just want to go with what the county does at all times, then I think that was the way we left it last time. You can do
Since
th-
then, a couple of people,
Yeah.
including Mr. Ledoux, sent me an email saying that actually we can't just refer to the, I just take it as it comes, that we have to use specific numbers that, and the reasoning was if the county should change their code and we're not aware of it, and it went on and on. I came away from Mr. Stegnovic's discussion saying, let's be consistent with the county. Consistent with the county is 100%. The legislation currently says 95%. I was convinced that 100 is the better way to go. I'm only one of 3 members of the committee and one of 9 members of the council, but I don't remember seeing any rewrite of the legislation from you.
I'm trying to recall right now. I believe I discussed it with Jacqueline Lee, so she did not upload anything or give you, now that I recall.
No.
Because the way we left it is that we were going to just adopt whatever the county does from time to time. I'm not that concerned if the county changes the law, because as long as the language in our statute or, you know, legislation indicates that we follow the county at all times, then, you know, there's not going to be any trouble with the legislation. It's whether the staff is aware of it, and there's no reason why the staff wouldn't be aware of it.
Well, let me ask for clarification, because I'm looking at the legislation, and it appears to me that we're moving from 100% down to 95%.
And now we're talking about moving back, at which
So
point,
what is it
the
that
question is, should
this
we withdraw
legislation
the
is supposed to do?
legislation?
You're asking me that question?
Well, right
Well, if
now.
you read the
yeah.
legislation, it says you should,
question.
whether you should withdraw the
If we
legislation.
withdraw the legislation, then right now, it's at 100%, right? The
Well,
code.
except for the high school. The high school is at 120%.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
So I think the first.
Yeah, so the first one is
First one, we could just leave
on
at
line
100.
19 and 20.
Or
19.
If I could, for the first one and the second, we could just say, and it talks about currently are projected to be equal to or greater than, we could just put
100%.
100%, or we could put greater than the current county standards if the law office thinks that'd be sufficient. I mean, that would at least prevent us from having to change it in the future to, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
Ms.
I'm good
Jelson?
with it either way.
Could we ask you, since you're our city attorney, what you would advise on amending it to say whatever the county does is what we should do?
There's certainly no problem with that. I understand what Alderman Arnett is saying in his conversation with Mr. Ledoux. You know, the city may not know that the county has made an alteration in their particular legislation, but as long as we have language that indicates that we follow whatever the county standard is at all times, including changes that they make from time to time, that we would be okay without a specific number or specific percentage, that is. Either way, I think it's doable. It just depends on what the committee thinks is best. So I would recommend either one, you know, can suffice. It's just that right now, I think when we put 95% in there, that's not what the county has right now.
Right.
Is that right, Pete? I think.
So we would,
yeah.
Amendment 1 from the committee would be on page 2, line 19, that we leave the code as written, not do the strikeout, and not do the underlined addition of 95%. So it would read projected to be equal or greater than 100% of the state-rated capacity within 3 years. And then we go down to line 25 and 26, which right now in the code reads 120%, and the proposal in the legislation was to change that to 95%. We would leave the strikeout of 120%, but instead would change to 100% of the state rated capacity. I mean, it seems to me like that's the simplest way to do it. If we want to put in language, we had talked about having language that would replace 1 and 2 in the entirety with a statement saying that the city would follow the guidelines established by the county. Right now, I think, first of all, this is going to apparently to a work session, so there's still more time. But I'd like to get this committee through with their recommendation on this, and then the council can have it at the work session.
Well, I'm not sure that I'm ready for us to make a recommendation, because things are constantly evolving. Mr. Gutwald, can you tell me if the county is still using 120% for high school?
No, the county is, my understanding, is 100% for all the different levels of school. But my only question would be, when you talk about the county standards, remember Alex was saying you don't want to, there was an issue of the county standards versus the way, because we do it a little differently. We calculate and process, the methodology is a little different than what the county does. So all you're getting back to is the utilization rate of what the county adopted. So I just want to make sure that's clarified. All you're changing is to be consistent with the county in terms of the utilization rate of the school, which is 100%.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
The county has a growth management area, which is the Pearl Town Center, one of 2 or 3, I guess. Is that
Yes.
what they're called?
Yeah.
Where they exempt out development in those areas.
Certain kinds of development, yep, within those town centers, yep.
Right.
All in
Odington is
Odington, right.
one other one. There may be a third one, or Glen Burnie.
Glen
So are we going to adopt that portion of the county's code?
Why would we?
Well, I mean, if we want to use the county as our model.
But those
It's-
aren't in the city. None of those 3 areas.
Annapolis, or Parole Town Center,
Not in the city.
feeds to, I know it's not in the city,
Oh,
but
okay.
where the kids from who go to that particular high school on Riva Road, they're
Yeah.
Annapolis kids, in large part, Annapolis kids. So that does impact us, because if Annapolis Town Center area is closed to, if the high school is closed to us, but not to the county, I mean, that sounds like the situation we're creating. Am I getting this wrong, Mr. Gutwald? You have a,
No, the town center is exempt from all the adequate public facilities in the county, so therefore, like the Marist building, you saw that go up even though the school was over 100% capacity, or, it was in a closed school district, or would have been in a closed school district. So yeah, that town center, for, I think it's specifically the multifamily, is allowed to proceed even though the school, because they're not subject to the APF. Whereas the city, since you're not designating any specific, opportunity area or growth area, that we would still be closed. We wouldn't allow any development to occur, residential development to proceed, where they do in certain areas, yes.
so that's my issue, one of them, that we're allowing the county to continue to increase capacity at the school. And then we are not, where it would benefit us to do so, let's say, if it would. We're allowing them to add more students to the school, but as it was spoken at the Education Commission last night, we're hamstringing ourselves and giving the county free rein, or the county's taking a free rein, because it's their legislation. Alderman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm not opposed to having that discussion about essentially carve-out areas, but my opinion as one of the co-sponsors, I think the intention was to just kind of keep this simple and focused on the percentage thresholds, and I think if we want to have that larger discussion at the council meeting, I'm good with that. But I think that's kind of a separate question in terms of, I think the first question is what percentages and thresholds do we want to go with? And, you know, I'm inclined to go with the, what Alderman Arnett has proposed, 100%.
Well, that's how you can take it. I don't see how you can separate that out, to be honest with you. It's all part of the capacity of the school. I am going to be sponsoring an amendment, if this is to move forward, that will look at exactly who the students are at Annapolis. Yeah. Annapolis has no less than 5 different programs going on in the school that draw from kids from all over the county.
So I do have some statistics on that. We did get some information. There's about, Sally, correct me if I'm wrong, but what we learned was there's about 14% of the kids that are out of boundary from that school that attend Annapolis High School that are not within the Annapolis High School district boundary. So that's about 200 kids, I think.
Is that this material we got?
No, we just learned that today, because Alderman Finlayson asked me that question, so we went to the school board and asked them if they had some data. I'll let Sally speak to it, because she...
Sally Nash, Planning and Zoning. Sorry, it's depending on what year, but in 2017, that would account for approximately 277 of the kids. So if you factored those kids into your utilization rate, you'd be in the 80s instead of near 100.
So, you know, if we're talking about school capacity and we're talking about Annapolis kids at Annapolis High School, then I think we have to consider the kids who we're counting who are not Annapolis students. They come from elsewhere for the IB program, the ESOL program, the PVA program, the ROTC program, and there's one more that I can't recall. So we have to be fair and look at the students that contribute to the Annapolis portion of the school, which looks like 14% do not. They come in on a special program. So, so my interest would be, if we're going to use the capacity, then we should use the capacity of the Annapolis kids. Because this is what we're talking about, you know, in our city of Annapolis. So 14% is what you said, Dr. Nash?
It's just under 14%.
Just under 14%. I was guessing 10%, but even it's higher than even that. And I know that changes every year, but not drastically. Vocational schools.
Clarify that again. Sorry, the 14% you're saying
are not Annapolis kids.
And that's for the high school?
For the high school.
Okay.
Because it's the high school that will close all schools in the city. If the high school is at capacity, then all of our schools are closed. All 11 of our 2 middle schools and 9 elementary schools. The whole city's closed down. Yes. Yes. Right. So that's what we're talking about when you're talking about capacity. It's what's at the who's at the high school. So if we move forward, then I'm going to amend that we address only the capacity that is brought on by the Annapolis kids. So.
That I look forward to seeing that amendment. I don't know. I'll be interested in seeing how that would work, but that's fine.
Well, Dr. Nash was able to find that data for us.
Right. No, I mean the actual mechanics of the amendment, but right now we don't have that in front of us. We have the legislation, and I would recommend that the Rules Committee put forth 2 amendments to the legislation. The first one being on page 2, line 19, dropping the strikeout of 100% and not including the 95%. This is for elementary and middle schools, which makes us consistent with the county. And then on line, so that would be Amendment 1, and on line 2526, that we accept the strikeout of 120%, but instead of changing that to 95%, we change that to 100%, again, to be consistent with the county. So those would be 2 amendments that I would move from the Rules Committee.
I would second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
No, and again, I understand the sense of what you're saying about we don't have control over, you know, a whole bunch of people coming in from elsewhere, and I'm really, truly looking forward to seeing that amendment and how it works.
Okay, further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed. And I will make my point with the full council in our work session on whatever that date is. And Mr. Gutwald, please be prepared to deal with this graph, this chart, and the duplication of numbers.
Well, yes, that's,
And also mine has coffee stains on it.
Well,
Sure.
he can have coffee stains, but we cannot have a duplication.
I was prepared to talk about that today, but if you want to save that for the work session, that's probably wise. But, okay.
And I probably should have brought this forward before we took a vote, but probably wouldn't have changed anything. Chris Trumbauer introduced legislation that he presented last night to the Education Commission that would restrict the growth management areas to housing that would not accommodate large families, people with a lot of kids. So they had their, I guess, public hearing last night, and it's up for a vote on the 15th, but it will limit what types of developments can be in the growth area. And I have
Age
copies.
restricted, or?
It's not age restricted. No, it doesn't include age restricted.
So I read it, thank you for providing this, but I don't quite understand what it does say.
Well, if you look at, I think the language is on page 2,
Right.
line 17.
Right.
For property located in the Parole Town Center Growth Management Area, an application for final approval of a sketch plan, a preliminary plan, a proposed record plat, or for recommendation of approval of an application for a building or grading permit in connection with the preliminary plan or site design plan, or for approval, a plan development plan for development does not require a permit, shall be
Governed by.
Yeah, but that doesn't speak to what I was looking for.
That's why
The next
I
page.
repeat, I don't understand what it says.
Oh, okay, there's much more on the third page.
Yeah, it looks like you have.
Exemption, residential development pro center growth management is subject to approval. And then there's 6 requirements. Project provides structured parking. Project is a mixed-use development that includes residential, commercial, or industrial usage that are integrated or connected by pedestrian access. Residential portion of the mixed-use project consists of multi-family dwellings with no less than 50% of the dwelling units consisting of, I can't speak today, of efficiency or 1-bedroom units, and no dwelling units with more than 2 bedrooms. And that's pretty much the crux of it. The project includes enhancement elements for bicycle, pedestrian, and transit infrastructure within the Parole Town Center Growth Management Area as determined by the Office of Planning and Zoning. 5th, the project includes enhancement elements that will improve conveyance, roadway capacity, or vehicular traffic circulation within the Parole Town Center Growth Management Area as determined by the Office of Planning and Zoning. And provisions of this subsection are not varied, modified, or reduced. So this is his legislation, if you guys would like a copy. It's Bill 94-18. So I do believe that it's premature for us to take an action, especially in light of what Council Trumbauer is planning to do at the county level.
I mean, I find that interesting. I think we should have that citywide. But we can always come back, and if the county council passes it, adjust our code to reflect that too.
This will pass before our work session.
Okay,
It's
good.
scheduled for a vote on the 15th.
All right.
So our work session, I think, is the 18th. So it will be approved before then. And I think he assured us he has 5, 6 votes, I think he said.
Madam Chair, are you proposing, do you have areas, are you bringing this as an example of things we could do in terms of having our own growth management area?
No, but if we're following the county standards, we don't have an area, I mean, by virtue of our comp plan, we had growth development areas, but not like, we haven't exempted anyone out. And maybe that's something that should be discussed as part of the work session. If we're gonna change our APF, then we need to look at everything about it, I believe. Not nitpicking, you know, what's the lowest hanging fruit. And so maybe this is an option for us to consider. Maybe my amendment or others may be a better option than strictly closing our schools and hamstringing us.
So, but it seems to me, if I'm understanding the legislation, Chris is trying to resolve a problem of the growth area producing a glut of kids by virtue of limiting the size of the units and all these other kinds of requirements. So he's taking care of that for us in terms of the impact it could have on the high school. I thought we were talking about something different, which is the fluctuations that come from students coming from out of the city into special programs, the IB and all the arts programs and those sorts of things. So I don't.
Well, this is a different subject, no question.
Right, yeah, okay.
Okay, I'm not suggesting that this was part of the amendment that I was, I'm proposing.
Okay.
No.
Good.
But this is another consideration for how to address what is perceived as overcrowding of our high school.
So, and another topic that is near and dear to our hearts, and I think maybe Shanika's, I've heard she's thinking about this, is some kind of exemption that has to do with workforce housing. Have you heard about that?
Well, I haven't spoken to her about it, but that was mentioned as part of this legislation. Workforce housing potentially could be included, but again, it's restricted in size.
Right. So I guess we'll get to all of that. I hope we'll get to all of that at the work session.
Yes.
Good.
I'm wondering also, just looking at this, and I know this conversation is going to come up later, but do we need to specify in this legislation the applicability? In particular, I think the intention is to have this apply to any projects that don't already have their certificate of adequate public facility. I don't see it stated in here. It just says it should take effect from the date of the passage.
Well, it says this ordinance shall take effect from the date of its passage.
As long as it's assumed in,
So what I said
Mr.
to you,
Gutwall, could you please
forgiven.
address that?
what I said to you at the last committee meeting was that we don't issue a certificate of adequacy typically until we issue the site plan approval. So they have to have their certificate of adequacy in order for it, you know, and we would utilize whatever current law that we're testing it up against to issue the certificate of adequacy. And typically we don't issue that certificate of adequacy at the time when we make a recommendation to the planning commission or we make a site approval for a site design.
So what should that be? If there should be another stopping point?
It's a policy decision I think Alderman Savage was getting at, but I think at the last time, it's at the point in time when you know, the law is the law once it takes effect, so therefore we issue that we would look at when we're doing the certificate of adequacy, we would check the box to say, have you met whatever the conditions are for that certificate of adequacy at that time when we're making approval? Because we sort of issue that certificate of adequacy at the time of site plan approval.
So that's at the very end of the process.
Yeah. That's what we issue.
So that means...
It's kind of weird because it doesn't state that. It doesn't say, you know, certificate of, you know, you could come in tomorrow and say, here's my property, I don't know what I want to do with it, can I have a certificate of adequacy? But, you know, that doesn't stipulate when you give the certificate. And the certificate of adequacy does not coincide with any other types of approvals because, like, a plan development's good for 3 years, but your certificate of adequacy is good for 5, you know. So there is not a connection between the two. In Title 21 and Title 22. So I think I said all this at the last Rules Committee, so I'm not saying anything new.
We're slow learners. You have to tell us over and over and over again.
Okay.
Looking at this chart that you guys created for it, how many, if this legislation were to be approved Monday night, how many of these projects would be stopped in their process?
I think all of the ones on the right-hand side.
All of them?
All those, none of those have approval. All those have a certificate. So if you go into Title 22, it says anybody that has applied for a certificate of adequacy gets included into that chart. That's another thing we could talk about, which was a conversation you and I had.
Over here.
Mhm.
So if they have so much has applied for a certificate of adequacy with their site plan, it gets included into that chart to determine whether the schools are open or closed. And the pupil yield factor is applied to that, and we put it into that third year. We lump it all into that third year.
Mr. Green, can we get that included, that chart included in the staff report posted with this legislation? Can you send it to?
It's on the website, so
It
yeah,
is, okay.
Yeah, we post that as part of our requirements. We post that every time we do a testing, so it's posted in every July and January.
Okay.
I made copies for the Education Commission last night, so.
So we've voted on the two recommended amendments. I would now make a motion that we recommend approval of this legislation 818 to the City Council with the Rules Committee amendments.
So moved.
Second.
I mean.
It's been second. Any further discussion?
No.
Hearing none. And before I call for the vote, I want you to know that I will, I don't want to say vehemently, but vehemently speak in opposition to the council supporting this as amended without consideration of all the other opportunities that we're being afforded.
I understand that, and I also am trying to figure out how this is all going to work out with the work session. So I would presume that this is not going to be taken up on the agenda on Monday, because we won't have the work
Obviously
session.
not,
that
right.
night.
It still has to go to, let's see, the Housing and Human Welfare. They've postponed, I believe, and then Transportation has not taken us up yet.
I think it only goes to
So
Transportation and Rules. Did you?
I thought it went to
No.
Housing
Yeah, housing.
too?
Yep.
Well, that would make sense. Okay.
Right.
I think they postponed it. Yeah.
Well,
So it's going to be another
then-
month until.
Then I'm going to probably propose that it come back to rules if there are significant amendments that come from the work session, proposed
hope so.
amendments. So that's why I'm not clear on why we're rushing to take a position on this if we know that Alderwoman Henson has amendments coming.
We don't know what they are, but I
Well-
don't think we're rushing. When was this introduced?
Well, if it's not right for prime time, it's still not right for prime time. I'm just saying.
Hey.
But, okay, the
Right is
motion
in
on
the
the
eye.
floor is that we approve,
recommend
0818,
approval with
recommend
the-
approval
with the
as
amendments.
amended.
Mhm.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposition? No. And we'll have that discussion at the work
Sure
session.
we will.
Be prepared. Mr. Hyatt,
Go
may
ahead.
you? I'm sorry, but please do, yes. You should have raised your hand 10 minutes ago before we took this vote.
All right, hot mic. For the
Hot
record,
mic.
Alex Kopicki with Solstice Partners, 706 Giddings. As somebody with 3 small children, I can certainly empathize that this is a hot topic from the perspective of capacity, education, classroom size. I will say that I'm opposed to this move as it stands today. I heard a few things that sort of emphasize those points. First and foremost, it's not clear to me the intent of the legislation. I mean, the original intent of the code, as I understand it, at 120%, took into consideration that a city inherently would have different family characteristics than a rural area. Inherently, family sizes would be smaller. There would be less impact. And from what I'm hearing in terms of 14% of the children at the high school attributable to areas outside of these specific zones, that would fall into place with the current regulations. The legislation is currently at 120%. Has it been studied with regards to the delta and variance between family characteristics in, say, the county versus family characteristics in the city? I don't know, but it should be considered from the perspective of understanding really the intent of this change. From my perspective, the current code and analysis has already taken this into consideration in terms of these characteristics. Second, I was combing through the publicly available documents, and all I found with regards to economic impact was a fiscal impact note. And I quote, the fiscal impact note says, "This could relate in lost revenue for the city." From my perspective, that's woefully inadequate in terms of a deep dive on its impact. My own analysis of parcels that are available for development, for workforce housing, market rate housing, that impact would be over $500 million in lost economic opportunity for the city. I mean, that is significant. I believe that the city budget is $190 million. So if you're making a $500 million decision, I agree with the chair that it should be studied carefully and these characteristics taken into consideration. I also believe that, look, there's a national endemic with regards to lack of affordability, the lack of market rate housing. The city of Annapolis is a case study for that. We have huge amounts of inequality, from the perspective of very high sort of waterfront homes, and then there's nothing in the middle. There is no market rate housing. There is no affordable housing. It's inadequate, and this legislation, if passed, would shut the door. It's a de facto moratorium. The Annapolis High School is closed under these regulations. So all you would be doing from an economic perspective is making the city a more expensive place to do business and to live. I'm not clear as to how that helps children, how that helps diversity, how that helps the city as a whole. It's actually the exact opposite of what you would want to do. Fourthly, I definitely implore you to explore alternatives. There's a lot of creativity out in different jurisdictions, different cities. This seems like woefully dramatic and draconian step. Why tie the city's fate from an economic impact perspective, from affordability perspective, to a governing body they have no control over? Have school funds been explored? Have charter programs been explored? These are all programs that are innovative, that could be taken into consideration to actually address the issue at hand without hamstringing the city from an economic impact perspective. And then finally, I really don't understand the current strategy with regards to vesting and adequate public facilities, and I would implore you to study that carefully with regards to the projects that would be impacted if legislation is passed. We have spent over $1 million planning and bringing to market Eastport Landing. It's just in the planning process. It would be nice if we were told up front that school capacity was closed. That would be a nice box to check. Why you would go through the entirety of the process and then be left at the end to say, okay, now we are going to go through and do a review of adequate public facilities is backwards from my perspective. And I understand, and Mr. Hyatt can back me up on this if I'm incorrect, is that is not what the county does. The county is forthright with regards to whether or not school capacity is open, and you actually will receive your vesting or your APFO at the beginning of the process as opposed at the end. So I'm opposed to bringing 2018 forward, and I would implore you to study this carefully, as the impacts of this are very significant. Thanks.
Alex?
Thank you. You have a question?
Yes.
Alderman?
Yeah. So interestingly, I find myself very much in agreement with many of the points you're making. And I will, first of all, the intent of the legislation is to keep our children from going into overcrowded situations. It may or may not adequately address that, but at least in its attempt to. And I have a sister who works at Tyler Heights in one of the temporary buildings full of mold. And so to me, the children, not only their education, but the conditions in which they're attending school are preeminent. And that is my motivation for being a sponsor here. But I totally agree with you. A financial impact on the city is not the same as an economic impact. We have an economic impact contingency in the planning department, and I think we really do need to be giving some strong consideration to not just what's the impact on the city's coffers directly, but what is the impact on city development, city growth, city well-being. I also am sympathetic to the notion you raised about the gap between the great haves and the great have-nots, and there's nothing in the middle. But I would turn that back to you, and in fact I just had a conversation with a constituent about this earlier today. If you have a 1 acre parcel and you have a choice of building a very upscale residential unit and selling it for over $1 million,
Sorry.
or doing workforce housing that you may be able to sell it for $200,000, I think I kind of know the evidence is in where the decisions are going. So since I'm agreeing with you, that says there's something that's not working, and I think that something that's not working is where are the incentives? How do we incent developers to be at least indifferent between one very fine home versus 5 or 4 very sufficient homes? Because I think it's very desirable to have our city employees in the city, experiencing the city life, experiencing the city tax rates, but basically really being able to enjoy the same delights of living in Annapolis as people who are moving here because they have the economic ability to move here. So I don't know whether you have your comments written down or in a shape where you could share them with us, but I would really like to have them, because I think there's a lot in there that is meritorious, and I'd like to give it further thought. So I'd appreciate if you could share that with the council. I'd like to pursue it further.
Yeah, I'm happy to share my comments. My handwriting is totally illegible, so I'll
Well,
type them up for you,
yeah, great.
and pass them through vis-a-vis email.
Good, thank you, I
Well,
appreciate that.
thank you, Alderman. I was going to ask for his comments also, because we should share them with all the members of the council.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Good afternoon again, Alan Hyatt, 200 Westgate Circle.
Afternoon.
You know, 0818 comes about 2 years after we went through the whole APF exercise, and we came up with this 120% of capacity for the high school for a reason. And based on your amendments today, that's all we're dealing with now. Everything remains the same, and you're proposing to reduce the 120% back down to 100%. And the reason we came up with the 120% is exactly what Dr. Nash found out. We knew there was students being fed to Annapolis High School from outside of the city of Annapolis. So that's why we came up, after a lot of struggle and discussion, we came up with the 120% number. So what 100% would do would be to shut the city down completely for any residential development. And if you're trying to mimic the county code, in the county you can elect to vest schools at the preliminary stage. You submit a sketch plan and you get vested for your schools at that point in time. Otherwise, why would any of these applicants spend the kind of money and time and effort to go forward if it was a mystery whether they were going to get schools? I mean, you know, there's a project that I've been working on for years. It's the Bemby Beach project, they call it, or the Bemby project, the last remnants of Carr's Beach. And I think Alderman Savage met with those people. And you know, they've been on this thing for I don't know how many years. I mean, it's been quite a while, and it's close to the finish line. Based upon what Mr. Gutwald said, and if this new law is adopted with 100%, they'd be out of luck. I mean, and what they have spent and designed expenses and planning, and you know, it's a travesty to do something like that. So while I understand the desire to keep it kind of simple, it's just not simple. I mean, there's no simple answer to this because, as mentioned, parole growth management area exempts schools. There is legislation pending that would change that, but when you have facilities that are one bedroom, have a certain number of one bedroom and efficiencies, then you're exempt. We've got to figure this out. I mean, you know, the idea is that we want to attract smart growth. You know, the idea is you want to bring growth where the infrastructure is. That's what the parole growth management area is all about. That's why they exempted schools. So we really need to look at vesting, when schools should be vested, because you can't, I mean, it's just unreasonable to expect a project to go through the system and then wait to the very end and then find out we can't get a APF certificate, and then to have the law changed and rug pulled out from underneath of us at the very last minute. I mean, it's just not reasonable. And the reality is, the city, and this is a bigger picture, and this is what we debated, Alderman Arnett, you probably remember. I mean, you know, the city has no control over schools. They have no control. We pay impact fees. We don't know where that money's going to be spent. It's supposed to be spent in the greater Annapolis area, but we don't know that. And then the city just hasn't contributed significant students. You know, the statistic I have, and I got it out of the budget. In 2007, there were 16,200 households in the city of Annapolis. And at the last budget that I read, there were 16,475 households. The city is not contributing a lot of students. So I think we have to be honest with ourselves. If we're really trying to reach a fair conclusion here, then let's go back to the 120%. And I mean, let's see how it works. We probably haven't had 3 projects go through the system since it was last adopted. Or let's take a long, hard look at the real numbers and what the city really contributes and how vesting should take place. And it's just not that simple, because adopting this with these amendments, you know, 100%, 120 to 100% on the high school is pretty drastic and dramatic. And I think, and I know this legislation has been pending for many months, but it needs more attention than this. So I would respectfully ask that you reconsider.
So, thank you, Mr. Hyatt. And you and Alex both have mentioned this. Instead of addressing the 120%, which obviously I do feel like addressing it and have in this legislation, but the other point that you've made, which is one that I understand, and maybe this is part of the process of processing permits, and I would throw this open to planning and zoning too, is maybe the adequacy test doesn't occur in at the right place in the process. Maybe it needs to be addressed earlier to give you that certainty that I know is very important when you're putting money on the line. So I certainly would welcome thoughts. You and I have some other things we need to do,
Sure,
like major site design definition.
Right. Yep. No, I'd like to talk about that, because
So
I think it. Yep.
I would certainly welcome some thoughts about where things occur in the process itself and when people get that certainty. I still am loath, as again, because of the experiences that are related to me by my sister. To me, kids come first, and anything we can do, even if we're erring overly in the wrong side of the balance, that's where my priorities are going to be. But I do understand that need for certainty, and I understand the money gets invested up front and all along, and at some point it would be nice to make sure that it's a safe investment. So,
But this doesn't really help the kids. I mean, really does not. I mean, it just stops everything. And if you want to help the kids, make a deal with the Board of Education that every dollar.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that because you said we don't have control Neither does the county. The Board of Education, we have this wacky system here where it's off on its own, and neither one of us have control over what they're doing. I think the Board of Education can control where they have the special programs. If they see at one high school getting overloaded because the students are moving there, they can say, we're not going to do that in Annapolis, we're going to do it wherever else. I think the school board can ameliorate a lot of these problems if they are of a mind to do it. And I frankly think that if the city and the county united and were approaching the school board and saying, look at what you're doing to us, we would be better served. I agree with you, artificial throwing a formula at it is not as good as having a sit down with the parties and say, come on, let's work this out. We need those kinds of processes, and legislation doesn't do it. So again, I hear what you're saying, and I have some sympathies for it, and I think there are other ways to address it than just 120 or 100.
All right, well, I'm happy to try to work on it because, you know, it's important. And how do we address the projects that have been in the pipeline, like the one
Right.
at Bemby I'm talking about? I mean, that's
Yep.
it. Yep. Okay. Maybe we should have the City of Annapolis Board of Education. How
There
about
you
that?
go.
Would you like that?
Yes.
And I nominate Sheila as chairman of the board.
You know, last night I mentioned to the Education Commission, because we had a pretty intense discussion about this, and keeping in mind that at least a third of the people in the room were education employees or school board employees. They sat back and didn't say anything because they know that whatever we do, they are an autonomous organization by law, by state law. The county has the responsibility of funding the school board, but they are not supposed to dictate as to what the school board is supposed to do. And we know those lines are blurred on occasion depending upon who the elected officials are. But Maryland is unique in that we have countywide school systems. And, you know, there are only 4 or 5 states in the country that have school systems like ours. Everybody else has their own little community school system that's made up of 1 high school, maybe 2 middle schools, and 3 or 4 elementaries. And that's the whole school district. Right. And there's a tax referendum every year as to whether they want to increase funding for their school. Well, we're not funded that way. And so in order for the school board to be made to do anything, we got to change state law that would give others the ability to mandate to them, which scares me also because educators should be left to do the educating. But we cannot fix these things in this legislation. Right. And you know, this is really not about the kids. Clearly, we can pretend that it is, but you know, we've had schools and we've had Tyler Heights increasing in population over the last 10 or 15 years until it got to 143%. And if we really cared about those kids, we would have been fighting for them 10 years ago, and we were not. And all of a sudden, the culture changed in the city, and we're going to use that as a mechanism for getting to something else, which is development, of course. This is the easy way to kill all development. The city already has the worst reputation for dealing with businesses, period. And this will not help us at all. We give our departments tools to get things done, and then we hamstring them with our legislation. I think we need to really consider what we're doing here. Don't pretend it's about the kids. You know, you have a mechanism. We came to 120% to deal with the out-of-area kids, and then we're going to ignore it and go back to 100%. Who is that really about? Really? Let's be honest. Okay? We need to think about what we're doing for the city. And, you know, I said this last night. We have a bigger responsibility, and that's to fit everything into this piece of pie. You know, we've got to deal with police and fire and public works and recreation and everything else. And yes, we care about the schools gravely, and we've got to do the right thing as best we can, but we've got to think about everything else also. And so to pretend that it's just all about the kids, I think it's a mistake, and no one's falling for it.
Well, Madam Chair, I try to be courteous and even-handed, but I know what my motivation is, and my motivation is to do the best for the children, and I kind of resent being told that that's not my motivation. So I respectfully submit my motivation is my motivation, and I'm doing the best I can at it. If we don't agree, I get that. That's why we have 9 different people on the council. But please don't question my motivation.
It is not personal, but, you know, I'm seeing what we have been, and we've gone through this for years, okay? You know, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what is really at the root of it, whether we want to admit it or not. And I know this is a hard thing to deal with, but, you know, education has been my life here. And I understand better than most how the systems work, and as it relates to the county. So don't challenge my knowledge either. You know, I won't.
Never done.
So, Alderman?
Yeah, I'm trying to find in the code, 'cause I just want to clarify this. It's not going to completely stop development. They have to remain on a waiting list for 6 years. And if we can bring, my mic wasn't on. So this doesn't completely stop development. It sets it at a 6-year waiting period. If the schools are over capacity, development in those areas have a 6-year waiting period. And so that gives us time, the county time, to actually figure out a way to get more capacity in these schools. It gives us time. If we can succeed and with the developers' help, lobby the county, the school board to make changes, great. But this at least gives us and them an incentive to push the county and the school district in this direction. So I just bring that up because I want to clarify.
Well,
that
may
point.
I ask, how do we get capacity in our school system? Do you know?
I think redistricting, I think you look at the programs like you've mentioned, the magnet programs, maybe they need adjustment. New construction, I mean, we've seen it happen. The elementary school capacities have been improved with some of the things that we've put in place. And even the high school capacity's gone down. I'm not entirely sure why. I believe from years past. So I think, but that's, I don't profess to be an expert. You have much more experience in education than I do. But I think there are options out there.
And I think we should explore them all. You know, we pay, or the developers pay, what is it called, the impact fee?
Yep.
That goes to the county. And they will only add an addition to a school in groups of 4 classrooms. Well, depending upon what the project is, there may be enough for 1 classroom or a need for 1, but they're not going to build 1 classroom. It has to be a multiple of 4. So money has to accumulate, and as you can see in our Annapolis schools, that hasn't happened. Renovations have occurred and additions have been added through those renovations, but you haven't seen any new schools being built. You haven't seen any major additions other than what was approved by the MTG study. So, you know, these ideas are great, but if they're not doable, then we should, you know, consider them for what they are. So by all means, come up with the suggestions that are workable, that we can actually implement to make this doable. You know, if we're going to deal with the 6 years, that's fine. Let the clock start ticking the moment they submit one of their levels of approval. And if this legislation is proposed to begin the clock ticking not at the end of the process, but as soon as they enter the process, how would that change your feeling about doing this? You know, right now it takes effect immediately. Mr. Gutwald, does it not? I asked you when it should take effect. Your professional opinion, I know you don't want to get into this fray, but when should it begin? Because that's what the amendment should say.
So that's not an easy answer because I understand the county has sort of a two-step process or three-step process. We really don't have that. You submit an application and it goes through number of different reviews and then it goes, and it doesn't really get to we don't approve it, we approve it for completeness and send it out for agency review. And then it goes through all these cycles of whether it meets the certificate, you know, what all the rules and regulations associated with the different departments. There's administrative approvals for certain kinds of developments, and then there's planning commission that requires, there's board of appeals that may be required for the special exception. And none of those, there's not a definitive decision point that comes down that says, okay, we've approved it for this, at this phase, therefore you're vested. That would be at the time when we give the approval. I'm not sure how sketch phase works versus, you know, like we have a preliminary forest conservation plan. That's really the plan's approved. It's not a final until we issue the grading permit. So the systems and the processes don't really match at what point. So you could issue a certificate of adequacy based on whenever they applied for the certificate of adequacy, unrelated to the site plan, but through the process, and taking Chesapeake Beach, Bemby Beach, Chesapeake Grove at Bemby Beach as an example, that project started in 2012. What that project was submitted in 2012 is vastly different from what it is today.
In a very positive way, I assume.
Yes, but the units, the types, everything has morphed over the years, so what are you testing it on for Title 22? Remember, the certificate of adequacy is everything in Title 22. It's not just schools. Schools is one element of that. So you test it for recreation and parks, water and sewer, fire, police, all of that. That's when you issue that certificate of adequacy. So which also brings me to another question Mr. Alderman Savage brought up about the 6 years. That 6-year clock starts at the point when they apply for the certificate of adequacy, if you read that section of the code. So is Bemby Beach good to go since it started in 2012?
Well, that's the question. I mean, you know,
I don't think you had schools in 2012, so it wasn't even tested
I mean,
for it.
it gets complicated. I mean, you use Bemby as an example. If they have to go out 6 years from now, I mean, that's a disaster financially. I mean, you know, what lender would lend any money on a project with those uncertainties? It needs a lot of help, and we've got to figure this out because schools, I mean, we have one high school to add to the confusion. You know, we have one high school that we feed into, and if the Board of Ed decides it wants to feed a couple more programs into it, then capacity can soar. It's just, there's a disconnect here, and we could end up, you know, trying to come up with some legislation and just really miss the mark, and that's what I'm afraid this does. I mean, Mr. Gutwald could say, all right, we could issue the certificate of adequacy as to schools right away because we meet the criteria on a project, but that's not what you're doing. You're waiting until the end, until, right, site design plans approved, and then all APS. I mean, you know, we've got to, there's got to be some consistency or we're going to end up in a mess. That's all I'm saying.
Alderman Savage?
Thank you. I have a question for Mr. Gutwald. Thank you for putting that out. So I'm just curious then, it says, all right, so the purpose of this chapter, the 6-year period begins when the application for a certificate of adequate public facilities and corresponding application under Title 21 is deemed complete. So when do they submit an application for a certificate of APF?
When they submit their application for a site design or a plan development or whatever they're asking for, they submit their application for certificate of adequacy at that time. So
even though the design, so when was that done, for example, for like Chesapeake Grove, since that's changed so much, what is the point?
Well, with each revision, we send it out for agency review, and part of that agent request is, are we still good with the Title 22?
So each time they submit for revisions,
we're asking to update it based on, yes.
Okay.
I think we redid the traffic study, didn't we? Yeah, we asked them to redo the traffic study since it had gone so many years.
I don't mean to single that out, but just since it was being talked about.
Yeah, I mean,
okay, and when do you make a determination on when the application is complete?
That's when they submit it, we review it, make sure all the pieces are there, and then we submit it out for agency review. At the point, if we submitted it out, if we send it out for agency review, we've deemed it complete.
Okay. So, well, I think that'd be helpful to see is when, according to your standards, if we pass this 100% threshold, which projects exactly would be frozen or not? Because maybe it's a moot point in terms of Chesapeake Grove. Maybe maybe the clock's already passed for them, right? But that's kind of what I'm curious to see.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about it too, as to what point in the process and how these things, does Bemby Beach, have they met their 6-year requirement? At the time, in 2012, there was no school test.
Oh.
So,
another wrinkle.
So you can see how things change.
Twist. Right, yes.
Yeah. So, they applied for another certificate of adequacy at the time they submitted their revisions, because we had to go through all that, so.
I think it can be covered by some grandfathering language if it goes that far.
I mean, there's ways to do it, yeah, I'm not.
Well, I agree there's ways, and the chair and I were just talking about it. We need to have some kind of a setting for the council where we can have a dialogue like this with the staff and with the community, the investment community, and the school community. I was really impressed how much Alex Stagnovich was listening to us and communicating. I think we need to set up a forum. I agree with the points that Alex Kopechny made. I agree with the points that Alan Hyatt is making. I just don't see how we have a mechanism that allows us to sort this out. We have these quick bursts. I think what Bob Waldman said about the Planning Commission, and I said it at the last Planning Commission, they sit down for hours and go over this stuff in detail, and we have basically 1-hour committee meetings and then minutes at most at council meetings. And I agree with Mr. Hyatt. These are big, important issues, and I think that we need to think about a better way to conduct business, a better way to have conversations. I think we'd find there's a lot more commonality than we suspect if we could have some process that would allow us to work these things out in a dialogue.
Fantastic.
Yeah. How much budget do you need?
Mr. Hyatt, do you have something?
No, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm done saying what I need to say, unless you have any.
Well, I'm going to reach out to Alderwoman Henson, who has requested the work session on the 18th, and ask that we have more of a dialogue.
Okay.
And unlike other work sessions where the community is not allowed to speak, I think we need to hear from Alan's and Alex and others who want to come in and share, as well as the school board. And sir, do you want to speak on this topic? Are we here for? Okay. Were you here for another piece of legislation?
Yeah, I was here to hear about what is it?
01418.
Yeah, well,
We're going to get to that tonight, or no?
I'm afraid we're not.
We're meeting again next Tuesday for a regular meeting. I do have to leave pretty much sharply at 6, so.
Well, it kind of falls in the same bucket where, kind of going through a process and, you're trying to appeal to all the regulations out there, but it's a moving target. So how do you go through the process if you don't know what the regulation is going to be?
Mm-hmm.
The work session on the 18th is
the 18th.
What time is that?
Is it 3 o'clock? At 3.
Okay.
The next rules committee is next Tuesday at 4 here. I think I'm going to lose 2 members of the committee in like 13 minutes or less. So I do apologize.
Yeah. I think, though, my sense, Madam Chair, is that we have 01418 4 of the 5 amendments. I think we've locked down. We got a long ways towards that 5th amendment which was actually the second amendment.
I was gonna say it was the second one that we had to.
I think we're gonna be able to, clear that up fairly quickly.
Well, let's put
next
that as
Tuesday.
the first item on the agenda for Tuesday, if that will fit your schedules. I know we need all three of you in the room, to address it. No, Pete, that would be you, Mr. Govt. I know you want to pass that off on anybody else, but no. The next Rules Committee meeting will deal with,
14 and 19.
14, 18, and 19, 18. Yes.
Yeah, that's good, I think. And we're gonna need, the Planning Commission made a lot of recommendations on 019. And I can see what they recommended, but I don't know why, and I wasn't at that Planning Commission meeting, so either you can translate it.
It's like 15 pages.
Yeah, it's a lot. So, yeah. If
So
you can do it,
you'll be
fine.
able
If
to
not-
speak to that, Pete? But you'll be able to speak to the Planning Commission's amendments,
And why they
proposed
did it.
amendments?
Okay.
Okay.
Good. Yeah.
Okay. They're all attached to the legislation, trust me,
Yeah.
they're there. Okay, anything else for the good of the order this evening? Mr. Elson, did you have anything you want to add?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay.
Gary, you and I are supposed to find some time this week.
You got a couple minutes after we adjourn? I mean, just to schedule some time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
All right, then, I'll entertain a motion
I move we adjourn until
Adjourn.
next Tuesday.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for coming.